Okay, um, I don't know how long it's been since I last posted. Um, I actually had this done several days ago, a few days ago. I don't know how long ago I did this. Um, but my back's been playing up, and I've had real struggles actually being able to do anything. Um, I have a disintegrating disc or disintegrating spine, more to the point, and it's really giving me a lot of trouble at the moment. Something seems to have changed in my spine, and it's just the pain is constant, and it's changed, and it's insane, and I'm not doing so well. Um, so, um, looked into this when my back started playing up last, well, a while ago, a couple of weeks ago, um, because I know a few people with this condition, or I know people who have got children with this condition. Um, One thing I do need to mention is that because of YouTube's rules and regulations, especially with all its updated rules and regulations, you do have to stick to the facts and the figures. And because I'm not a trained doctor, I'm not medical in any way, shape, or form, I do have to be very careful of how I present these kind of things. So I find as many facts as humanly possible. Um, and I go through all of the sites, and I go through my granddad. I had to give the journal back to my uncle yesterday because he wanted it for something. He had to look it up, something up. But my grandfather's got an actual medical book. My grandfather had. I mean, he died in 2008, and I've been using that as well. But my uncle asked if he could have that back for so he could look for something. Um, so I've been looking through that as well. My grandfather was a nurse, um, so I've been using that as well, and so it's been kind of cool. And but so I kind of like learning new things and finding as much as possible. But when it comes to all the science and the research and things like that, I have to be very careful what I put out and what I say and how I present it. Um, Otherwise, they take the video down and they ban me. And yeah, it's not quite so good. So I did have to be quite careful as to how I presented this one because there was a lot more science involved in this one and a lot more research involved in this one and a lot more things that I couldn't put into this one. So I had to be a lot more careful how I present this one. So this is acute spina bifida. It's a birth defect. Now, spina bifida is actually more common than people think it is, for a start. And it occurs in the spine and the spinal cord. When you talk about the spine, you're talking about the actual bone in your back, the actual spine, the vertebrae. And it's when they don't form properly. And it's classed as a type of neural tube defect. And neural tube defects are when the brain happen when it is the structure in the embryo that will become the brain, the spinal cord, and the tissue that surrounds it. And when they do that, this thing, the neurotube, it starts to develop very early on in pregnancy, and by the 28th day, it should be fully formed and closed. So your brain, your spine, and the spinal tissue surrounding it should be completely formed and closed by the 28th day of pregnancy. Now, anybody with a neural tube defect, this will not happen. Something will have gone wrong by the 28th day of your pregnancy. Something would have happened. It would not have either formed properly or it wouldn't have closed. Now, if that happens, it will be spotted on a scan by your 28th day. Yeah, you'll see it. It'll be noticeable on a scan, because it happens so early on. So in spina bifida, part of this won't develop, it won't close properly, thereby causing a spinal cord issue, plus issues with the spine itself. So it is, spina bifida doesn't really affect the brain, it just affects the spine and the spinal cord. And there are different types. Which, and they range. So you've got things like spina occulta, which means it's hidden, and it's one of the mildest and the most common forms of spina bifida. And it's a small separation or a gap within the spine, within the vertebrae itself, and can go unnoticed. And now, when it goes unnoticed, people can live for a few years before it becomes noticeable, and only becomes noticeable when they start moving around, or if they don't start moving around, because it will only be noticeable as they get to a point when they're supposed to be doing things. Their development will become slower. And that's when you'll start to notice it, and you'll take them to their doctors, they'll order a scan, and that's when they'll see it. They'll need a scan on their back. That is when they'll see it, and it will be noticeable then. And then obviously you'll go to specialists and they'll deal with it. These ones, right, I am going to say it right now, the next two, I cannot pronounce them very well. Okay, I'm going to spell them out and I'm going to try and pronounce them. Did tell you how to pronounce them, but I still couldn't do it very well. Okay, so it's spelt Myelomengocele, right? And they tell you to pronounce it myelomengocele. And I have no idea if I've even pronounced that right. So yeah. No idea. Okay, this is actually one of the most severe forms, regardless of how I pronounce these things. It is actually one of the most severe forms of spina bifida. It's where the spinal canal is open across most of the, several of the spine of the vertebrae. So it won't be like in one place. So it won't just be like in one, one after the other after. It'll be across like several of the vertebrae will be open. And it can range, and it can sort of be across like from the lower to the middle back. It did tell me that from birth, these membranes will push through the spinal nerve, so it will push the membrane. So these gaps in the vertebrae will leave gaps big enough for the membrane tissues, the membrane itself, to push through the actual back itself, and through to the spinal nerves, which form like a sac. So they'll have like a lump that is visible from birth, which will leave them prone to life-threatening infections and illnesses, and can cause things like paralysis as well. It is absolutely, from the second they're born, it is seen, because it forms like little, When they say sacs, they're talking about little lumps on the back as it pushes its way through the gaps in the spine. So it will just form a little lump on the surface of the back. And they call it a sac. It is visible as the second they're born, they'll see it. But yeah, that is one of the most severe forms of spina bifida. And not only can it cause like the paralysis as well, but it can also do things like affect the bowels and your bladder. So it can cause things like incontinence. You know. So yeah, it's not good. There is one more form. Okay, and again, this one is called meningocele. And it's pronounced meningocele. Oh, why do they do it to me? Okay, and it's the rarest, absolute the rarest form. And it forms a sac of spinal fluid right through the opening in the spine. You will have, when the baby is born, when your baby is born, there will be a sac of fluid that will be visible, and it's spinal fluid. So there will be openings in the spine, and through those openings there will be spinal fluid coming through, forming sacs. This one, however, does not affect the spinal nerves or even spinal cord, just the actual vertebrae itself, the actual spine. As it, with the gaps in the spine, it doesn't even say how far up the spine it goes. It might even go all the way up, but it doesn't tell me how far up it goes. It just says that there will be gaps, openings in the spine, and in those openings spinal fluid will go through and form sacs. I mean, this could end up being something that will maybe one gap in the spine, or it could be several gaps in the spine where there will be these little sacs of spinal fluid, and it is noticeable. They can see it, you know, because obviously the sacs are visible. This one isn't as severe as the other one, but it could lead to issues with your bowels and your bladder. Could give you sort of mild incontinences or mild issues, and other minor health issues along the way. Yeah, but those two are visible from birth, completely visible from birth. Yeah. And although the doctors, medical professionals are not 100% sure what causes spina bifida, they completely know. They believe it is a result of a combination of genetics, nutrition, and in the environment. Family history of neurotube defects, things like vitamin B's deficiencies, are the most common in people. Most common reasons people get it. So now they have done the research, and it has come out as an absolute fact. Like it or not, deal with the fact or not, but it is a fact that people who come from a white or Hispanic community or have been found, as well as to actually be at higher risk to get spina bifida. And do not come for me, but that is a fact. It is that's just how it is. And it's also more likely to affect women than men. Pure fact. Nothing I can do about that. It is a fact. Absolute 100% fact. Deal with it. Don't come for me. Can't change the facts. I did find that a bit weird that it only really, I mean, obviously it affects everybody, but it is most common for those people, for us. You know, very strange, very weird, but the fact that it's there and they stuck it out for the whole world to read it can't come from me. 100% fact. Sorry. Now, one thing that I will say is the common causes, when it came to the common causes, and they talked about things like the vitamin deficiencies, during pregnancies, a lot of women do generally take a lot of vitamins and minerals to ensure health and whatever during pregnancy. But if there are any kind of deficiencies during your pregnancy, it will affect your baby, especially things like a B9. Now, B9 is also found in folic acid, which is why it's recommended to most women who are pregnant to take folic acid, because a B9 deficiency is absolutely necessary for baby health. It is. And which is why most women will take folic acid tablets during pregnancy. But if you have any kind of anemia, you see, during my pregnancy, I was severely anemic. I was really lucky with my son. He was, apart from being autistic, he was really, you know, the only real health issues he had when he was born 6 weeks early, and his lungs weren't quite developed yet. That was it. But I was severely anemic throughout my pregnancy. Severely anemic. I've had a lot of issues with my anemia. I've been on iron tablets and folic acid for years. Still on them, even now. I have to take them daily. If I don't take my folic acid, I'm screwed. So I've been on iron tablets and folic acid for over 20 years. I have a lot of issues with anemia and iron and vitamin deficiencies, and I have to take them. But it can cause issues with baby health if you're pregnancy. And you're very, very lucky if it doesn't hurt or hinder your pregnancy or your baby when it's born. Because if you have things like a B9 deficiency, it can put your baby at higher risk for things like spina bifida. And also with things like family histories of a neurotube defect. So if you also have had another child with spina bifida or another kind of similar or a similar kind of condition, it puts you at risk for having another child with it. If you're on any kind of medications, I was lucky I wasn't on any medications when I had my son. So I was lucky, but I mean, I wasn't on the medication I'm on now when I had my son. Because if I had, with my deficiencies, I might have been in a much worse off position. Because I'm on 2 different types of anti-seizure medication. Just purely because they mess with your body. One of my anti-seizure medications actually does screw with my folate, my iron levels, which doesn't help me, which is all the reason why I spend a lot of time taking iron tablets. it's not good. But if I don't take the medication, I'm screwed. You know, there's a lot that comes into medication and what it does to your body. And when you're on a lot of strong medications and you're pregnant, it can have adverse effects on your baby. So you do have to be very careful, but it can put your baby at risk if your medications are messing with your iron or your vitamin levels, your folate levels. If they're messing with all of that, it puts your baby at higher risk for spina bifida, according to the facts. And that makes perfect sense, because without those, it can't do its job properly in the womb. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into, you know, growing a child. You know, and if without the right vitamins and minerals and everything else, it can have an adverse effect on that procedure, I suppose, and can end up hurting unintentionally your baby. You know, but yeah, they are very common causes, and according to the facts, that is how these kinds of things put your baby most at risk for spina bifida, because it happens at birth. You know, it's dangerous having a mother on strong medications and without the proper care and the right irons and vitamins and minerals to be taken, which is why she has to be so careful. You know, and for all the men out there, pregnancy isn't an illness, it's not a sickness. It doesn't make us incapable of doing things. It just means that we have to take very good care of our bodies so that the baby that we're growing gets everything it needs to grow. And when you look at things like this, it kind of brings home how important it is that we have the right things in our system to grow the baby. But we're at like 23 minutes. I will go through the symptoms. I didn't think it was going to take this long, to be fair, because the symptoms aren't that long. Well, actually no, the symptoms are quite long. What I might do is do another video explaining the symptoms, because the symptoms differ slightly between each of the different versions depending on which type of spina bifida you have. The symptoms change slightly, and I managed to actually find a few of, like, actually some of the symptoms, the main symptoms of each one of the spina bifidas, as well as the complications from having any kind of spina bifida, and then obviously how it works and how it's, yeah. So yeah, so I will do that tomorrow, and yeah, it's just, I thought this one was just going to be a bit interesting, just a little bit different, especially as my back was playing up. I just thought it would be something a little different to do. And I'm going to go, and I shall see you all later.